Good evening to each and everyone. This is Mr. Ira Jesus E. Ching Jr., your economics teacher. This evening, we are going to talk about the story behind capitalism and communism. What were the advantages and disadvantages of communism, not only in the present, but also the impact of it in the modern times, no? So we're able to count that one from way back 1945 until to 1990, and we also reflect those happenings and its impact in the present day. So the objectives that we want to know about this topic is, first one, we need to define what is capitalism and what is communism. Second one, we are going also to tell more about their influences and what is the impact of their influences on that specific nation that being subjugated by these two ideologies, the capitalism and communism. And the third one, what is the impact of this not only in the past events but also in the present times, and also what is the application of this in a real life, in a real settings, or in a real settings in the economy. So let's have first our first slide, the clash of superpowers vying for economic interest. So if we talk about superpowers, we are not talking superpowers that we've seen from the television, we've seen from animated films. Superpowers, it refers to two nations that fought indirectly to one another way back 1945 up to 1991. So we are talking about the United States of America, which is the new bearer of capitalism. And we have also the USSR, the new bearer of communism. So USSR stands for Union Soviet of Socialist Republic. Allow me to type it, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. So that's how you spell the USSR. To make it short, let's call them Soviet or Russians, because all throughout the slides, we are repeating the names of Americans that represents the United States of America, and we have also Russians that represents the USSR or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Okay, so let's move to our next slide. If you try to remember in our previous topic, we are talking about Adam Smith. This is Adam Smith, and we are talking about Karl Marx. If you try to remember, these two ideologies clash to one another. They have a very opposite ideas to one another. The two thinkers have opposing ideas about the role of the private and government in the economy. Their concept became popular and influenced millions of people around the globe. Some resulted in disaster and some resulted in peace. It turned out to be in black and white. So what do you mean by black and white? This is a metaphor. Our life is full of black and white. It's full of flaws and it's full of success, full of failure, full of disappointment, but at the same time, it is full of colorful life. It is full of achievements. Sometimes our life is full of negativity, positivity, optimism, and pessimism. So, which means the impact and influence of these two ideologies bring success. At the same time, it also brings fiasco. So, capitalism represents by Adam Smith and communism represented by Karl Marx. If you try to remember, my dear student, the idea of these two persons, the idea of these two economic thinkers, as Karl Marx is the father of the communism and Adam Smith as one of the four founders of capitalism, their idea of economic system is extreme. If you try to remember, it is extreme because I provided you an infographics regarding about their ideas. Why extreme? So let's define first capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system in which the private owner is the dominant in the economy and there should be no government intervention. So which means the private owner should be the one who owns the production, the ones who owns the supply, the distribution of goods and services, and also the one who manage the flow of money in the economy. That is how capitalism. So whereas in communism, it is opposite, quite opposite from capitalism. Communism, the government should be the one who dominates the economy. So which means there will be no existence of any private ownership. So the government owns the property, the government owns the goods and services, the government are responsible, the government is the responsible to distribute the goods equally to the community, to the people, to the citizen. So this is an extreme version. Why is it an extreme version? If you try to remember my infographics, my dear students, if you try to look up down below Adam Smith and Karl Marx, we do have John Maynard Keynes, and we have also Friedrich August Hayek. Friedrich August Hayek is a moderate version of Adam Smith. He believed that there should be no government intervention, but in a minimal only. So there is an intervention, but a little or minimal intervention, but not to the point removing this intervention. Because Hayek believed that if the government doesn't exist, there will be a problem financially, because the government, the one who managed the printing of the money, if you try to remember that one. But this is a moderate version because it's trying to stresses out the same to Adam Smith, that businessman is very important in the economy, but there is only little or minimal intervention. So that is a moderate version. That is the most realistic type of economic system. Now let's have from Karl Marx. Karl Marx moderate version is John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes believed that the government should always intervene in the economy. Okay? But Keynes don't want the removal of private ownership because private ownership is very important in the government. So we have Keynes, the moderate version of Karl Marx, and we have Hayek, the moderate version of Adam Smith, capitalism. Capitalism and communism is an extreme version because it is not easily to apply. It is impractical in a way that the people could not able to live without this extreme idea. So the moderate version is only Keynes and Hayek. So why do we need to talk about Adam Smith and Karl Marx? Because they were the core founder of this ideology, and their ideas had impacted millions, not only millions or billions of people throughout the world. Because they're trying to apply this ideology. If you're living in the 1947 to 1991, you are only to choose two ideologies. Whether you become a capitalist, which is under the United States of America or the Western Allies, or you were under the Soviet Union or the Russians, which is a communism type of economic system. So the name of the conflict between the two that started in 1947 to 1991, this is what we call Cold War. The indirect clash between the USA, the bearer of the capitalism, and the USSR, the bearer of communism. Always remember, my dear student, these two nations assume that they were the bearer of capitalism and the bearer of communism. But in reality, they weren't able to apply that one because, as we talked about a while ago, this is an extreme version. But they were assuming that they were the bearer of capitalism and communism. So they have the right, they are authorized to spread and influence the country that they want, as long as to get the natural resources of the specific country. This is very related to economics because their interest on that country is not true political, but the primary purpose is to subjugate the subjects in order to acquire this adequate supplies and natural resources from that country. Okay? So, indirect clash. So, when we talk about indirect, these two countries, USA and USSR, never met in the field to fight one another. Instead, their influence country or the people they supported with arms is the one who fought one another. But there is also instances that there is a presence in the of Americans in that country, but there is no presence of USSR. And sometimes there is also a war in which USSR is physically present on that country, but there is no presence of United States of America. That is why it is indirect. Let me give you an example to make us these ideas clear. In Korea War, United States of America landed physically in South Korea. And these South Koreans, together with the Americans, they fought against the North Koreans. North Koreans is a pro-communist. They were part of Soviet Union. They were influenced by Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union don't want to fight directly the United States. Instead, the North Koreans are being trained and armed by Russians. So the North Koreans, they were the one who fought against the Americans in the South Korea. So indirect clash because there is a presence of USA, but there is no presence of USSR from the North. Another example, we have Vietnam. Vietnam is divided into two during the time, North Vietnam and South Vietnam. There is a presence of United States in South Vietnam. So the South Vietnamese, together with the Americans, they fought against the North Vietnamese. But when the United States of America fought with the North Vietnamese, they haven't received any informations or presence of Russians from the North because the Soviet Union supported the North Vietnamese and trained the North Vietnamese to fight the Americans. So indirect clash. So that is why Cold War is indirect clash between United States and the USSR or Soviet Union or the Russians. As you can see below, this is the symbol of United States. This is Uncle Sam, and this is a gigantic bear that symbolizes the Soviet Union. By the way, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, this is the old name of Russia. After the collapse of Soviet Union, it became Federation of Russia, the Russia that we have known right now. Okay? So this is the flag of Russia. Okay. So allow me to get my pen if I can able to reach my pen here for a moment. Because okay, so I will give you a picture of that flag so that we can able to picture out what this mean all about for a moment. Okay. So let's check because I haven't provided yet a picture about it. USSR flag, USSR flag. Okay. This is the flag of USSR, my dear student. Okay, this is the flag. As you can see, we do have here a hammer and we have also a sickle. Sickle represents farmers and hammer represents workers. Because the communist nation believe, or the believer of the communism, they believe that the main point in order to become equal is we need to focus our attention from laborers and workers. That is why if you try to observe every time if there is a rebellion happening in a country, Some of the rebels, they bear this flag, which means if they bear this flag, that means that specific rebel groups or organizations are trying to promote communism because they believe the workers, the farmers, the laborers are the priority in communism. And there should be an equal distribution of this specialization. Because if you try to remember, my dear student, communism talks about equality. Okay? So they believe that everybody should be equal. So that is the very concept of communism. But the United States don't want this idea because they have also their own. They have also their own, the capitalism. Okay? So let's move from the next slide. We have World War II face off. So let's read first. During World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union had joined forces to fight against the Germans. So which means these two nations, the Soviet Union and the United States of America, were friends. They, why is it they became friends? They became friends in order to defeat a very powerful enemy during the World War II. And we have, from to be specific, we have Germany, which is spearheaded by Adolf Hitler. If you are able to trace down our history, Germany under World War II is headed by Adolf Hitler. So as you can see on our map here, Germany is being sandwiched from side to side by Western allies. If we talk about Western allies, we are talking about three nations. We have United Kingdom, we have United States, and we have France. From the east side or from the right side, we have Soviet Union because this is a bigger country. They can stand all alone by defeating the Eastern Front. Okay, so they able to squeeze the Germans. Okay, by the second month of January and February up to March of 1945, these two allies, is, in particular, we have United States and Soviet Union. They met at the bottom part of Germany, nearby the Elbe River. They meet one another, and this picture is from the Elbe River. As you can see, the Soviet Union and the Americans hug and embrace one another because, for the first time, these two allies able to meet at the ground. Okay, so they able also to what we call this, to plan out, to advance plan what will happen in the future of Germany. But that is not an official meeting, not official conference. But after of a short meeting between the Soviet Union and Americans, the Western Allies decided that the Soviet Union should be the one to subjugate the Berlin, which is the capital city of Germany. To make this story short, in May 1945, the Germany, the leader of the Germans, were officially surrendered with unconditional surrender. So Germany defeated. But it raises the questions, what will happen to the future of Germany? What will happen to the people of the Germany? Guess what? What will happen? Before we arrive, what will happen to the Germany? What happened after the World War II? Europe was divided into two different factions. Okay? So what happened is, as you can see, we have red flags from the east and we have the Western allies from the west. So let's continue. Iron Curtain. Europe divided between East and West Bloc, or Western Bloc or Eastern Bloc, my dear student. The Western Bloc is under the Western Allies, which is spearheaded by the overall Supreme Commander, United States of America. As you can see, the blue painted country, these are the Western Bloc. And we do have here countries from the satellite of Eastern Bloc, which is all of them were communists. The blue, which is all capitalists. This is Soviet Union and this is from United States of America. And we call this one an imaginary border known as the Iron Curtain. As you can see this one, this is an Iron Curtain. Okay? Why is it Iron Curtain? Because you can able to pick from the other side of the border, you can see the other side of the border, but you cannot cross the border. That's what Iron Curtain means. If you may ask, why is it the people cannot able to cross? It is very logical. After World War II, each side, the Americans, the Western Allies, and the Soviet Union decided to create a stronghold that will guard the borders. Though some of the borders there were not erected or constructed with a very strong wall, but instead they put some of the guards with a weapons so that the people from the other side, from the west, cannot able to cross from the east, and vice versa, the east from the west. So that is why the people can able to see from the other side of the border, but they could not able to cross from that border. So this is Iron Curtain. Europe was divided into half, but Germany itself also divided into half. As you can see, my dear student, Germany was divided into four. We have the green map from United Kingdom, the blue for France, the yellow for United States of America, and we have the reds for Soviet Union. But in 1947, these three countries, the USA, France, and United Kingdom, decided to merge their territory as one, and they called this one as West Germany. But the leader among the three, the one who administer and head of the West Germany, is the United States of America. Okay? On the right side is Soviet Union. This is exactly what happened in Germany. Okay? Europe was divided into half. Germany also divided into half. West Germany and East Germany. If you try to look at clearly, we have here a very colorful division. This is the capital city of Germany. This is Berlin, because the capital of Germany is Berlin. So let's take look at it in a closer perspective. So this is Berlin. Berlin is also divided into four occupation. Okay? So Berlin, the capital of Germany, was also divided into four zones of occupation, but later divided into two due to the Allies' agreement to merge their territories. So this is blue for France, we have green for United Kingdom, we have yellow for United States of America, we have red for Soviet Union. But in 1947, the same happened into West Germany, in which these three nations merged their territory. The three also decided to merge their territory as one. And these three territories became West Berlin. And the east side is East Berlin. But this time, it is not only a guard that they put from the borders, but instead they put a wall so that the people could not easily cross from the other side of the wall. They call it the Berlin Wall. If you try to picture out, the Berlin is under the zone of occupation of East Germany. So try to look at back the map. It is very ridiculous because the West Berlin is under the zone of occupation of East Germany. So if you are on the side of Soviet Union, this is very humiliating. This is so embarrassing. Inside the zone of our occupation, there's still division of Berlin, the West Berlin and the East Berlin. So what happened next is the Soviet Union create a Berlin Wall. So they create a Berlin Wall by putting a wall here. So they're not only putting a wall here, but also they put wall from the borders of this territory from the Western Bloc. So they put, just follow the cursor, my dear student. They put wall here so that the East Berliners cannot cross from the west. And they also put Berlin Wall here. So follow the cursor, my dear student. Follow the cursor. They put Berlin Wall. So if you may ask, why do we need to put Berlin Wall on this side? Follow the cursor, my dear student. Why? Why? Because, my dear student, West Berlin is under the zone of occupation in East Germany. Okay? So that the East Germans could not able to enter the West Berlin, so that they close it three on the 360 angles like that one. Okay, but since this is a very humiliating on the part of the Soviet Union, because the division is under the zone of occupation of East Germany, what happened next is the Soviet Union cut off the railway station which is connected from West Berlin to West Germany, because it was connected by railway station, because that is the only way the West Berlin to cross from West Germany. So we have plenty of railway here. So follow the cursor. Just imagine, follow the cursor. This is a railway station from West to West Germany. Another railway station. And another railway station from here. So there are plenty of railway station. But in 1947, this railway station has been cut off by the Soviet, because it is very humiliating that there is still a division of Berlin within the zone of occupation of East Germany, which is under the hands of Soviet Union. So the problem here, many Berliners, or the West Berlin, the name of the people living in the West Berlin is West Berliner. So they were starved. They were starving because there is no food supply coming from West Germany to West Berlin, because Soviet Union cut off the railway station that connects West Berlin to West Germany. So what the Allies did with the help of France, United Kingdom, and spearheaded by United States of America, they did the unthinkable. This is one of the remarkable event in the first year of Cold War. They cannot cross from the land because the railway station is being cut off. What the Allies and the United States did, they sent tons of food supply, fuel, medicine using the sky. So they use airplanes, they use cargo airplanes, and they flew above the West Berlin and drops tons of medicines, fuel, food supply. So they drop it. So in each of the cargo they drop, it is carried with parachute. Imagine like that one, if you try to picture out from the movie, they're dropping foods, and each of the supply has its own parachute. That is exactly what happened in the 1947, because the West Berliners could no longer able to get acquired goods from the West Germany because the railway was being cut off. So the only way they could connect is the Western Allies decided to flew above the West Berlin and drop some of the supplies. They did this for 11 months. Imagine, my dear student, they did this for 11 months. 11 months of sending fuel, medicines, and food in the West Berlin. 11 months and 250,000 times within 11 months. Try to imagine that one. This historic event is also known as Berlin Airlift. If you try to search them from Google, that is a very historic. It almost got me goosebumps when that happened. Because the sky is full of cargo plane, full of airplane that drops tons of foods. Because of this, the Western Allies became successful of their mission to stop starving these West Berliners. Because of this action, after 11 months, the Union Soviet of Socialist Republic conceded, they surrender. They surrender and they reopen the railway station. With that time, the West Berlin able to cross from West Germany. So after 11 months, the Soviet Union reopened because they surrender the West Berlin to the Western Allies or to the United States. So if you may ask, why did the Soviet Union did not shut down those airplanes? My dear student, take note. This is a Cold War. The Russians don't want to confront directly the Americans because those were American planes. If they will shut some of the cargo plane, that means that is a brink of war. That means they declaring war from the United States directly. If these two nations will fight directly, there might be another war, which might known as Third World War, and that is a scale. The scale of that is very big because these were two bigger nations. These were superpowers. So in order not to provoke this, the Soviet Union conceded, surrender and reopen the railway station. With that, the West Berlin able to cross my dear student, from the West Germany. Okay? So what happened is, my dear student, Europe is divided into half. Germany is divided to half, West Germany and East Germany. And also Berlin, which is under the zone of occupation of East Germany, is also divided West Berlin and East Berlin. It is just like having a cake and you slice the cake into half. And the other half of the cake is also sliced to half. And the other half of the cake is also sliced to half. Just like what happened also in Europe, divided into half, the West Bloc and the East Bloc. West Bloc is capitalism, East Bloc is communism. We do have also Germany, which is divided into West Germany and East Germany. West Germany is capitalism, East Germany is communism. And we have also Berlin, which is under the zone of occupation of Soviet, but they were, but the Berlin also divided into two. We have West Berlin, which is capitalism, and East Berlin, which is communism. That is the impact of the Cold War, my dear student. The scale is very wide. Okay, so let's continue, my dear student. The next topic that we're going to talk about is known as the domino theory. The Allies were afraid of the growing influence of communism, believing that one country with strong support for communism would greatly influence the country next to it. Have you seen a domino? You try to put them upright to one another. The first pile of domino, once it will tip off, the domino that next to it will also fell until up to the end. Just like what happened also in the picture you have seen, China was fell and it was followed by Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. But here in Thailand to India, the mission wasn't not that successful because it was able to contain by the opposition. Okay, so which means if there is a presence of communism, if there is a strong support of communism from that country, there is also an American intervention. Because according to Harry S. Truman, the president during the time, we need to contain this communism. Because if we are if we are sitting idle and we just leave this communism to spread from that country, the neighboring country of it will also be affected by it. That is exactly what happened. And there is no mistake that the domino theory is true because in 1949, China is officially became a communist country. China was a pro-communist country and was supported by the Soviets. China officially became communist in the year 1949. Way back 1930 or 1932, let's just have 1930s, late 1930s or early 1930, there is two parties in China, the Nationalist Party and the Communist Party. These two parties fought one another because Nationalist Party is a pro-capitalism, and we have Communist Party which is pro-communism. The Nationalist Party is headed by Chiang Kai-shek. Later on, you will see the name of Chiang Kai-shek. And we have also communism, which is headed by Mao Zedong, who is being influenced by communism. This is the face of Mao Zedong, my dear student. When the 1937 reached, the mainland China was invaded by the Japanese Empire. So Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong joined forces in order to defeat the Japanese. So let fast forward. After the defeat of the Japanese Empire in the mainland China in 1945, this Nationalist Party and Communist Party fought again, fought for supremacy. To make the story short, the Communist Party led by Mao Zedong defeated the Nationalist Party. And then the leader of the Nationalist Party, which is Chiang Kai-shek, fled to a smaller island also known as Formosa, and now it called Taiwan. That is why the Taiwan exists, because Chiang Kai-shek, the first president of Taiwan, fled from that country. So there were two China. So it became People's Republic of China, which is headed by Mao Zedong, head of mainland China, pro-communism, and we have Republic of China, which is headed by Chiang Kai-shek, head of Formosa, pro-capitalism. That is why there is always a tension between Taiwan and mainland China. When they heard that Taiwan is being supported by the West, this mainland Chinese leader might infuriated. They got mad when they heard about that, because they believe once Taiwan is being subjugated by West, it will become pro-capitalism. Okay? While China is became officially communism in 1949, another country in Middle East, which is very rich in oil, is being coupled with supremacy between the two superpowers. Iran. Iran faced the daring task of solving traditional Islamic culture and modern Western materialism. The superpowers play a shadow role at the expense of the Iranians. Okay? We do have here Muhammad Riza Pahlavi. You will know the spelling of the name after this slide. Muhammad Riza Pahlavi is a pro-capitalist, which means it was supported by United States of America. But some of the people don't want the style of political handling of Riza Pahlavi. Because take note, my dear student, Iran is a conservative country. This is a Muslim country. But Riza Pahlavi's style of governing is he allowed the women to remove their hijab. And take note, hijab is a sacred for women. They should always wear that one if they're going outside the public. So many people got angered because Muhammad Riza Pahlavi trying to destroy the Islamic conservatism culture. So what they did, they rebelled against Muhammad Riza Pahlavi. And since these rebel, they have no arms, they have no weapons. So the Soviet Union supported these rebels in order to defeat Muhammad Riza Pahlavi. But the Soviet Union wasn't able to convince the rebels to embrace the communism, but instead, the only interest of Soviet Union is to defeat their opponent, the United States of America, no? And undermining the embracement of the communism. So the main point is their intention to remove the United States of America without embracing their own brand of political economic system, the communism. So this rebel successfully able to oust Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, and they replaced that one with another leader known as Mossadegh. Mossadegh is a prime minister during the time, and he elected by the Iranians. But the problem is Mossadegh is a cruel and brutal leader. Again, for the second time, the loyalists, because there are plenty of loyalists left in Iran, they want to bring back Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, who is being exiled after the rebellion. So with that, Mossadegh was defeated again for the second time. Muhammad Reza Pahlavi became the leader. But since not all people are approved by this type of political system of Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, another rebellion rise because they want to remove totally this person because this Muhammad Reza Pahlavi trying to destroy the Islamic conservatism. And there is only one person who could stood out against Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, and his name is Ruhollah Khomeini, the person that you have seen. Ruhollah Khomeini is a priest. These are the leaders, some of the leaders in Iran. Priests, they call themselves Ayatollah. Okay? Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini being exiled outside from Iran. So he tape record and send this to the Iranians. So the people, millions of Iranians being inspired or spurred by this tape recorded by Ayatollah to rebel against Muhammad Reza Pahlavi. So after a while, after listening to this tape recorded, the people of Iran rebel. For the second time, Muhammad Reza Pahlavi ousted from Iran. So this country was successfully transformed, not both communism and capitalism. They became Islamic Republic of Iran, which is headed by Ayatollah with a partner of Prime Minister. So Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, the head of Pahlavi dynasty, the pro-capitalist, was ousted. So capitalism wasn't successful. Capitalism wasn't successful, my dear student. So Islamic Republic of Iran, which is headed by Ruhollah Khomeini, the head of Islamic State, pro-Islamic fundamentalism. So there is no both presence of capitalism and communism because majority of the people wanted to bring back the glory of Islamic conservatism. So both superpowers were not able to gain the trust of the Muslims. Okay, while Iran able to oust the interests of the communism and capitalism, another country which is part of East Asia was successfully divided into two, and we have Korea. We do have Korean War in 1950 to 1953. As you can see, Korea was divided into two. This is the very reason why Korea is divided into two, because of the two superpowers. Both superpowers toppled the Japanese troops in Korea in 1945. After the surrender of Imperial Japan in World War II, the two superpowers competed to subdue the peninsula. Okay? This is one of the reason why is it the Korea was being divided. When the USSR conquered the north, and then they able to reach the south, the United States of America landed. So the Soviet Union pushed back to the North Korea, and it was successfully divided into two. And this is the 38th parallel. This border is known as the 38th parallel because It was located in the 38th latitude of the map. Okay, for a moment, someone is messaging me. Sorry for the disruption. For a moment, 30. Okay, okay. So where we at right now? So in 1950, Kim Il Sung, the grandfather of Kim Jong Un, decided to ask for support for Soviet Union because Kim Il Sung, the leader of North Korea during the time, wanted to transform the whole Korea into a whole nation. So by 1950, with the support of the Soviet Union trained the North Koreans. Soviet Union provided tanks and weapons to North Koreans, attacked the South Korea in 1950. So North Koreans invaded South Korea slowly by slowly until they able to reach at the bottom part of Busan or Pusan in the older times. But unfortunately, when they able to reach at the bottom end, the United States physically landed in the south. So they able to push back the North Koreans. Please follow the cursor, my dear student, because I don't have a drawing tablet right now on my hands. So please follow the cursor. So the United States in Busan pursue, chase the North Koreans across the border. They chase it after they're able to reach at the top part of North Korea. So United States able to chase these North Koreans soldier up to this border. When the Chinese government heard that there is an upcoming uh, allies or Americans from this border, the Chinese government, Mao Zedong, sent millions of Chinese troops in order to reinforce the North Koreans from this border. So when these millions of troops entered the border in North Korea, the United States pushed back again from the south. So the North Koreans chase the Americans and the South Koreans. They able to reach from here, from South Korea again. But when the United States of America heard that there were plenty of Americans pushed back because they were chased by the North Koreans, the second invasion happened in Incheon, which is headed by General MacArthur. Because General MacArthur is also assigned from Korea during the time. If you heard General MacArthur, he is also the person who said, I shall return from the Philippines. He had also a mission from Incheon in 1950. So when MacArthur and his men landed from Incheon, they able to cut off these invading forces from South Korea, and then it was successfully divided in the 30th parallel. So that is the story behind, my dear student. Okay. That is why until now Korea is being divided into two. So what happened is Republic of Korea now it's headed by Syngman Rhee, the first leader, head of South Korea pro-capitalism, which is spearheaded by the United States. And we have Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is headed by Kim Il Sung, head of North Korea pro-communism. So the question, are the two superpowers successful in their mission to spread communism and capitalism? The answer is correct because they're able to divide Korea. Check for Syngman Rhee and check for Kim Il Sung. While Korea is under the hands of both superpowers, another nation in Southeast Asia became also the middle of issue of this Cold War. Vietnam War 1955 to 1975. Vietnam during the time is also divided into two. We have North Vietnam, we have South Vietnam. By the way, what happened in Korea is also Cold War because there is no presence of Soviet. They trained the North Koreans, but there is presence of Americans in the South. Indirect clash. The domino theory is also real because the northern part of North Korea is also China. The northern part of China is Russia. Domino theory is very real. Why is it the communism able to spread in Vietnam? Because the northern part of North Vietnam is China. North Vietnam is under the hands of communism, which is under the USSR or supported by the USSR, and South Vietnam is also supported by United States of America. They are being influenced by capitalism, my dear student. This is a very long war, my dear student, that lasted for 20 years. So let's have here. After the war in Korea, Vietnam was influenced by two superpowers. The Soviets supported North Vietnam and the Americans supported South Vietnam. Okay. What really happened here is also Cold War because by the year 1965, 1955 to 1965, uh, many Americans landed from the South Vietnam, meaning they landed physically, while in North Vietnam, there is no presence of Soviet Union from North Vietnam. What the Soviet Union did is only they support arms and they train the North Vietnamese on how to fight. But the problem here in the Vietnam War in 1973, the Americans um, pulled out from South Vietnam. They pulled out. They withdrew from South Vietnam and leave the South Vietnamese in vain to fight the North Vietnamese in 1973. The first reason why the Americans withdrew from South Vietnam, the first reason, many people from the America at home uh, protested, demonstrated against the government because they don't want to draft no more from the Vietnam War. They don't want to draft. They don't want to recruit with the government. So there were plenty of teenagers, there were plenty of students during the time who protested all throughout the big cities of United States of America in the early 1973 because they don't want to draft no more from the Vietnam War. And this fight is very costly to the economy of United States of America. And so that is why Richard Nixon, which is the president during the time, decided to pull out the Americans. So they slowly by slowly pull out the Americans until the full withdrawal of United States in 1973. So by 1974 to 1975, this is the golden opportunity of North Vietnam to invade the South Vietnam because South Vietnamese live in vain. So by 1975, the South Vietnam became successfully a communist. So the whole Vietnam became a communist country. That is very sad. The United States wasn't able to completely transform the South Vietnamese into capitalism. At the same time, the war could easily be finished. What I mean, North Vietnamese could easily embrace easily the communism from South because there are people, a group of people from South Vietnam supported communism. Even if they were part of South Vietnam, they still support communism. They call themselves Viet Cong. Okay, so this growing support not only from North but also happened in South. But in 1990, my dear student, the government of Vietnam decided to transition from communism to a democratic type of country because the modern leader in 1990s in Vietnam believed that they could not leave if the pure communism will thrive from the country. The economy could not survive if they keep on believing in this extreme version of communism. So Bao Dai, the leader of South Vietnam, wasn't successful, but Ho Chi Minh, the leader of North Vietnam, was successful in transforming the whole Vietnam into communism. Bao Dai X and check for Ho Chi Minh. While Vietnam is under the hands of communism, we have also a country from Latin America, also known as Cuba, which is a fought one against the superpowers. We have Cuba. We have a very important event happened during the time, which is the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1972. The pro-communist feelings in Cuba were strong because of this. The relationship between the Soviet Union and Cuban leader Fidel Castro tightened. It was more intense when the Soviets sent and installed missiles in Cuba, believing it would stop Americans from meddling in the communist affair in Latin America. Sorry. Way back 1950, there is a leader in Cuba. His name is Fulgencio Batista. Fulgencio Batista is a pro-capitalist man, pro-capitalist leader. So take note, who is the one who supported this one? No other than United States of America. Fulgencio Batista is a corrupt leader, brutal leader to his people. Many Cuban citizens grown wary about this. So because of this, many people ask for help to a person. His name is Fidel Castro. And many Cubans believe that the only way could oust Batista is Fidel Castro. Because Fidel Castro has a strong sense of leadership in Cuba, even if he is not totally a leader during the time. To make the story short, Fulgencio Batista was being defeated and Fidel Castro ousted Batista from Cuba, and then Fidel Castro successfully sit and overthrown became leader. But the problem here, Fidel Castro is a pro-communist leader. Because of this, the Soviet Union heard of this man and they supported Castro for at all costs. As you can see in the picture, my dear student, this is the place where Cuba located. After Fulgencio Batista was being defeated, the Cuban loyalists, when you talk about loyalists, meaning to say this is a loyal people, a loyal citizen to Batista. So they exiled together with Batista. They spread all throughout from the United States and other majority from Mexico. When these exiled Cuban reached Mexico, the CIA was assigned to train this exiled Cuban. So they trained them with weapons, they trained them how to fight, and then by the following ensuing year of 19 in the late 1950s, these uh, these Cubans returned and tried to invade Cuba with the help of trained by CIA. So when they reach Cuba, particularly in the Bay of Pigs, this is a beach. This is a Bay of Pigs. These exiled Cuban, when they're about to invade, they expect an air support, but the American support wasn't there. To make the story short, their mission was failed. So they're being defeated by the men of Castro, and some of them will be beheaded, and some of them were exiled and executed. So there are plenty of exiled Cubans return and invade and being killed. Because of the grown worry of the invasion or the future invasion of United States to Cuba, Fidel Castro asked a support from Nikita Khrushchev. Nikita Khrushchev is the leader of Soviet Union during the time. He is a male, but the name is just like a female, Khrushchev. So this is how it's spelled, Khrushchev. If there's something mistake from the spelling, you can search from the Google. But I bet this is the spelling, Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev. So Fidel Castro asked help from Nikita Khrushchev from Soviet, and then what Nikita Khrushchev replied, yes, I will support you at all costs. To stop the Americans invade the Cuba in the future, I will install missile sites from Cuba. So Nikita Khrushchev installed missile sites. I forgot how many number it is, but did they say it is more than 20 above missile sites from Cuba? So these missile successfully reached Cuba in the 1962. When John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States in America during that time, heard the news that there is an installation of missile from Cuba, he called uh, Nikita Khrushchev. This is a big threat in our country. You need to remove this missile. But Nikita Khrushchev said, why do I need to remove that one? Because you are threatening my satellite country, the Cuba. You need to remove this one, Nikita. Nikita said, okay, so I will remove this missile, but in one condition. And what condition is that? I will do it for you. Anything, anything you want for us to stop this. Because many Americans during the time, even your grandfather who were born during the time, they were also startled by this event. Because it is nuclear, my dear student. It will cause mass destruction all throughout the globe if there might be a nuclear war. You're not being affected by this, but the atmosphere is being affected all throughout the globe if this nuclear might happen. Because the radiation, the scale of radiation, my dear student, once it reaches from the atmosphere, it is worse. Many country which is not being affected by this might also be affected even if you are 100 miles away from United States. So many people get wary about this. So Nikita Khrushchev said, okay, so I will remove our missile, Kennedy. If you are going to remove also your missile sites from Turkey, which is nearby Soviet Union. That is so ridiculous, my dear student. It is very silly. Which means the United States also installed missile nearby Russia. So what Kennedy said, okay, so I will remove those missile. So Kennedy removed all those missiles from Turkey, and to followed by order, Nikita also removed the missiles from Cuba. But what happened is communism spread all throughout Cuba. Cuban became communist. But they also transitioned in 1990 because they believed they could not live in communism. They transformed their country also into democratic country. Okay. So we have Fulgencio Bautista Republic of Cuba, which is headed 1952 to 1959, the pro-capitalist. We have Fidel Castro, the pro-communist. Look at that, 1965 to 2011. How long is that this person reigned? So capitalism failed, X for Batista, and check for Fidel Castro. Okay. While Cuba is under communism, moving forward, in 1979, there is also a bigger event that happened. Afghan-Soviet War, 1979 to 1989. Afghanistan was, this war is quite different from Korean War and Vietnam War, because in Korea War, there is a presence of the United States, but there is no presence of USSR in the north. In Vietnam War, there is a presence of United States in the South Vietnam, but there is no presence of USSR from the North Vietnam. But here in Afghan-Soviet War is different. The Soviet Union landed physically in Afghanistan, but there is no presence of Americans in Afghanistan. So how did these Americans able to fight the Soviet from the Afghanistan? Because there is a specific rebel group in Afghanistan and they name themselves Mujahideen. Okay? So you spell this one as Mujahideen. Mujahideen. Soldier of God. They call it soldier of God. Okay? Take note, my dear student, Afghanistan is the same as Iran. People there were conservative, Islamic conservatism. Okay? So way back 1970s or the early 1975, Afghanistan is influenced by the idea of communism. So some of the early leaders in 1975 or the late 1975 were influenced by communism. So which means the United States could not able to integrate their way of capitalism in Afghanistan because Afghanistan is being influenced by communism. Okay. So what happened is many religious priests in Afghanistan don't want this government to embrace communism because these mullahs, these are the religious priests in Afghanistan. They believe that Islam and Quran could not be applied with communism because the idea of communism, with the student, is equality. All people must be equal. So how could you able to equal everything based on the fact in Quran, women and men should not be equal. Man should be at work and woman should be at the household. That is based on Quran, and that's what the mullahs believe. So with the strong support of mullahs, many people from the mountainous area, the tribe, the Mujahideen, wanted to rebel against this Afghanistan communist government. But the problem is, Mujahideen, they don't have weapons. The question, who were the supporters? No other than the Americans. So the Americans supported the Mujahideen with weapons. But the primary problem of the United States is they want to support the Mujahideen, they want to train the Mujahideen without knowing that they train and support the Mujahideen. So the technique, the strategy is very clever. What the American did, they don't provide the Mujahideen with M16. Take note, M16 is an American weapon, also known as Armalite. If they will issue an M16 to Mujahideen, the Soviet Union, if they will this Mujahideen, if they will confront the Soviet Union in the field, the Soviet Union might see, oh my goodness, this Mujahideen was being supported by the United States because they were armed with M16, and the Americans don't want that to happen. They want to play shadow in supporting the Mujahideen. In what way? The Americans purchase tons of AK-47 from China. AK-47 is a communist weapon. If you try to picture out, if you have seen, let me show you what Armalite looks like and what M16 looks like so that you could able to visualize M16. This is M16, my dear student. This is an American weapons. They don't want to issue Mujahideen with that because they might caught by the Soviet Union that Mujahideen were supported by the Americans. Instead, what the Americans did, they purchased AK-47. This is an AK-47. This is the rebels, commonly used by the rebels, M16. A very long magazine with Corvée magazine. This is an M16. This is called an AK-47. Did is since the southern part of the neighboring country, southern part of Afghanistan is Pakistan. Okay, Pakistan is already allied themselves with the Americans. So the United States purchased tons of AK-47 from China. They shipped that AK-47 to Pakistan and asked the government of Pakistan, or the Pakistani themselves, sent the weapon to the southern part of Afghanistan so that these mujahideen will support and issued with AK-47. That is a very clever way of supporting the mujahideen. Look at look at the cleverness and the manipulation of United States. They don't want to present themselves, so they support the mujahideen in shadow. They purchase AK-47 from China, which is also a communist country. But if you may ask, why is it the the Chinese tolerate this trade of AK-47, where in fact the buyer is American, which is a capitalist? Because this is business. Arms is business, my dear student. If there is war, there is always a business. So Chinese purpose is for money. So they don't care about these Americans, the buyers, were the capitalists. They mine only for money. So that is why they are being tolerated by the Chinese to purchase their AK-47 by the Americans. So when they bought this AK-47, they shipped this to Pakistan, and the Pakistan government will be the one to send these weapons to the rebels from the Afghanistan, so that there will be no suspicion that this mujahideen is being supported by the Americans. To make the story short, the mujahideen is still fighting from 1979 up to 1989. Many people have died. Okay, while this rebel still continued, the Soviet Union was withdrawn. They withdrew from 1989 because there are many people defeated. They leave the Afghanistan government, the Soviet under government of Afghanistan, able to deal with this mujahideen. So the fight still continues, and then 1989 the war is over. But Afghanistan transformed themselves into a communist government. But they also transitioned themselves because honestly speaking, majority of the people in Afghanistan don't want communism. So they preserve the Islamic. Mujahideen factions, rebels who fought Soviet and Afghan pro-Islamic conservatism. We have Babrak Kamal, pro-communism, People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. Babrak Kamal is being also replaced with Muhammad Najibullah until 1992. But in 1992, my dear student, Najibullah transitioned themselves also to a new type of government, which is a democratic type of government, but at the same time, with tightened with a Quran belief, the Islamic conservatism. So which means the communism and capitalism weren't successful in Afghanistan. Instead, the people live on their own terms. Okay? But sad to say, my dear student, when this mujahideen was disintegrated, it was divided into two factions. We call it Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Taliban is the terrorist group. Al-Qaeda is also a terrorist group. This Taliban able to rule the Afghanistan way back 2022. If you have heard the news that the Afghanistan government is being toppled by the rebels or the rebel organization, the name of the group is Taliban. They were connected once to Mujahideen. And Al-Qaeda, the most famous terrorist group who destroyed the World Trade Center in September 11, 2001, the Twin Tower, the tallest tower in the United States during the time, they were responsible at that one. When their leader Osama bin Laden was killed and captured, this Al-Qaeda was also disintegrated and declined and created a new wave faction known as ISIS, Islamic State of Iran and Syria. These are the new brand of terrorism. If you try to ask yourself why this terrorist group emerged, that is because of the tension between the communism and capitalism way back in the 1989. That is so devastating. That is the impact of Cold War with your student. If these two nations weren't meddling in the affairs of Afghanistan, and Afghanistan weren't, and the Afghanistanis government are not influenced by this communism, maybe the people living in Afghanistan were not suffered from this extreme poverty. Because one of the poorest country in Asia, I believe that if you try to, this is only based on Asia continent, Afghanistan is one of the poorest country because it was contaminated with terrorist group, rebel group from coming from Syria, Iran, and from Iraq. So they're pouring. They consider Afghanistan as their sanctuary. So that's how detrimental the Afghanistan is. These two countries, the communism USSR and capitalism USA, they weren't happy about their competition in land, but instead they keep of inventing rockets to threaten the other side, the opposition. But there is no nuclear war happen, but instead it is more on threatening the other side. So both of them invented rockets and missiles until they able to reach the sky. Because the next competition is very remarkable in the history, space war. The superpowers compete not only on land but also in the sky. When the Soviet Union launched its first artificial space satellite, the Americans felt threatened, so they found their own too. So when in the early 1957, Union Soviet of Socialist Republic launched Sputnik. The purpose of Sputnik is not to espionage the location, the area of the United States. The only purpose is to show to the world, to show to the United States that they're way behind from the technology. Because this is a competition. Always remember that one. They want to humiliate. They want to feel disappointed that the Americans were way too behind from the technology. So they send Sputnik. So this Sputnik able to orbit the Earth. Because of this, the United States was being threatened. So they think of another uh, unmanned unmanned spaceship, but it was failed, and that is televised around the world. And the Russians were left of that failure mission. And for the second time, the Soviet Union also launched Sputnik 2, and there is also a passenger in it inside that is Laika, the dog. So this time, the United States are way too behind. And after that, because of the sending Sputnik, finally the Americans able to invent their own, which is exactly the same, not exactly the same in terms of spare parts. This is a satellite that also orbits the Earth, and that is Mariner and the Explorer. So there are plenty of the ensuing uh, small spaceship or small satellite that orbits the Earth. Because of this, the Soviet Union also threatened because the United States able to have their own. So they send man, the first man in space, and that is Yuri Gagarin. So the United States also threatened when Yuri Gagarin, the first man on space. So they also did the same thing. So they also sent first American space, Alan Shepard. But this competition has uh, this is never ending. So the Soviet Union think of another variation. So they sent first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. So in the pursuing event, they also send three men who lands in the moon, and that is Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and also Michael Collins. By the way, my dear students, many people said that the landing is fake. My dear student, what you have seen in the Google picture, all of the picture were fake, my dear student. But landing in moon is very real. They legitimately able to land in moon. But the pictures they provide from the Google is fake. So here it how it goes. This is the story behind. When they landed from moon and they took photos and videos, they could not able to appreciate the quality because the quality is very poor to the point that if you provide and present this to the people on earth, they will very skeptic about this quality. Is this real? Are you able to land in moon? So because they're very disappointed of the results and the output of these videos and photos from moon landing, they trash the old one, and when they reached the earth, the American government decided to rent a studio that has a soil like a moon, crater like a moon, spaceship, astronaut suit, and also an American flag. Because United States is very prideful nations, they want to flex their flag the way it the way it was on land because since there is a zero gravity on moon, they could not able to wave this flag at all. So that is why they trash out this old quality and remake it from the studio. So that is why it is a fake moon landing because the picture they provide from the Google is fake. That is totally fake with your student because that is not already authentic. And United States were afraid to present the old quality because the people might be skeptic that if it is real or not. That is why they remake those landing. So imagine this space race have disadvantage and disadvantage. Okay, but for me nowadays it is more on advantage side because we are able to benefits from internet because our internet connection, our network could not be able to connect with the other side of the world, could not able to watch other channel from the another parts of the world or the other parts of the globe without a connection from the satellite, and this is very important. This is somehow a game changer for us. So without those competition, we could not able to benefit from the things we want today. Those products that we want to have, that we want to send, even messages, even products through online is powered by satellite. So the world's connecting to one another every side of the globe because of this space race. This is some of the important. Because of the growing problem of communism, the Eastern Bloc revolt. If you try to remember by the student, Europe was divided into Western Bloc and Eastern Bloc. So many people from the East trying to cross the West, and this is the very problem. Despite despite this race between life and death, people still wanted to cross from east to west because many people suffered poverty, hyperinflation. Not all country in the Eastern Bloc experienced this, but the majority of the people really see the difference between the West and East. If the Western Bloc able to enjoy their life, able to enjoy the fruits of a capitalist system, the Eastern Bloc suffered, impoverished. So these sacrifices was way too long from 1947 up to 1989. So there is a connection between countries or the satellite country from the Eastern Bloc that they want to revolt. So by 1989, Poland revolted. We have Czechoslovakia revolted. It is somehow like unexplainable connection by one country to the other. They just fought for a cause. They just fought for their nation. They want to become independent from the Soviet Union. As you can see the picture, there, the citizen able to overwhelm the soldier. This is probably from Hungary to be able to overwhelm. That is a very strong demonstration of the people. So there were less military opposing the masses because of these overwhelming numbers of protesters from the street. The tank driver able to pull out himself from the tank and let the people run out this tank and drove it all the way to the city. So that is a very powerful mission. That is a cause. The satellite territory of Soviet Union, particularly in Eastern Europe, revolted against the repressive ruler and threatened the system to crumble, which Soviet communism began in 1947. So Poland, we have from Soviet Union, all of them were revolted to one another. Okay. Because of this collapse of Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Berlin Wall also destroyed. This is the Berlin Wall, as you can see. They climbed and scaled the Berlin Wall because they were successful to reunite again the West Berlin from East Berlin, West Germany from East Germany. So there is a story that there is a couple. They were being separated because of Berlin Wall in 1947. So the male was in the west and the female was in the east. And then when this Berlin Wall destroyed in 1989, they able to reach each other's arms from the other side of the wall. And then they picked some of the rings so that they could be able to be married. So they were successfully married. That is why love can wait. Okay. So there's lots of story happening. Even in the early even in the early 1947 and 1950, when this Berlin Wall was first structured in west and east, many people are being desperate to cross. Some of the people from the east they cross from the sewerage, and I know sewage is very contaminated with manure, human waste. So they're trying to sacrifice their hygiene for the sake they're able to cross from the western. But there's some also story that there's a father with three children, and then they went through from the sewerage system. The three children able to cross successfully from the other side of the wall through sewerage, but when they successfully able to reach the west, they are being asked by the western guards, the western building guards, so where is your parent? And these children, um, with an innocent response, they got shot. So that is a very saddened story, my dear student. There are plenty of story. Some of the people cross by the use of hot air balloons, some of them through zip line, and some of them they will cross desperately in the checkpoint because there's checkpoint between these two borders. Some of the people are they cross through the buildings that connects the west and east, and then but the problem is some of the doors are being blocked by bricks because the Soviet Union don't want to cross them from the other side. So what happened is some of them they jump out from the window even if it could cause life and death. Some of them their bones, their feet bones got fractured, but they were happy they able to cross from the west. That's how the people from the east experience because they are very desperate to cross from the other side of the wall. That is the very desperate of them. Because of this, the Soviet Union collapsed, and there are many reasons why the Soviet Union collapsed. The first reason is they have new leader Mikhail Gorbachev. His name is Mikhail Gorbachev. Okay? Mikhail Gorbachev is different type of he had a brand of leadership that he able to apply a semi democratic, a semi capitalism in Russia. So many people got surprised with this type, and many people from Russia during that time slowly by slowly revolted and protested from their government because they are grown wary about the involvement of the Russians from the Afghanistan war. And second one, Afghanistan war is very costly and it could cause a lot of money pulling out from the system of the USSR, and it could drown also the treasury of the USSR. And the third one, the main problem is mainly from the East Bloc crosses from the West, and it could lose them lots of skillful employees that could bring the productivity of the Eastern Bloc. So those are some of the factors that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. As you can see, we have many colorful nations here. We have Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova. We have Hungary, what we could have seen it. We have Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And even the northern part of Mongolia, they were part of USSR. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, this country, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, were became independent. They were becoming independent nations. That is why there is a reason behind why is it the Russia wanted desperately to regain this Ukraine, because that is once part of the Soviet Union during the time, and it will successfully collapse. And then, to tell you honestly, capitalism is not also successful because this is an extreme version of Adam Smith. But totally, almost all the nations in the world able to apply mixed economy. When you talk about mixed economy, there are not both capitalism and communism, but instead they embrace both because it's mixed with semi-capitalism and semi-communism. So almost all the nation except North Korea, which is still stands still with their idea communism, we are being embraced by mixed economy nowadays. So these are the major strategies of Cold War. We have foreign aid, we have propaganda, we have espionage, we have brinkmanship, the multinational alliances, which is headed by the NATO from the capitalism, and we have Warsaw Pact from a communism. Proxy war, the example of Vietnam War, in which there is a presence on the other side, but the other side is not. And we have also Vietnam that is proxy wars. Propaganda, they're trying to influence the other people through their posters, through their ideals, through their books. That is also propaganda. Foreign aid, if you try to remember the Berlin airlift, that is also an example of Berlin. That's foreign aid. Helping the North Koreans, South Koreans, and so on and so forth. Espionage, they're trying to sneak out from one another. They're trying to spy one another so that they could be able to know the advancement of technology from the other side of the opponent. Brinkmanship, this is just like what we call this, a brink of threatening one another so that they could be able to bring from a war. Okay, in Bisaya term, this is just like hata-hata, no? So to threaten the other side of the opposition. So by the way, I forgot to number this one as 5 and this is 6. And the lesson ended in the picture of Berlin Wall. So this is exactly the Berlin Wall. Okay. So how many minutes? So we're able to spend 1 hour and 47 minutes with this. Okay. So thank you very much, my dear student, for listening, and I hope you're able to understand. And please also review this video. This is very important. This is part of your examination. Thank you very much. And